Part of a broken nation, one man wore the uniform of pride. But pride has a cost. They called him a hero of the South, General Cyrus Whitmore, respected, feared, obeyed. Until the day he saw the truth behind the banners. Slavery, cruelty, blood spilled in the name of honor. And Cyrus could no longer stand silent. He defied the very flag he once swore to protect, freed a prisoner he was told to kill, and crossed the line into the arms of those who once called him enemy. But redemption doesn't come with surrender. It comes with sacrifice. Betrayed by his own, wounded by those he once led, he chose to stand with truth, even if it meant dying for it. This is not a war story. It's a reckoning. The general who switched sides after seeing the truth. The portrait on the wall didn't smile anymore. General Cyrus Whitmore sat beneath it, staring into the face of his younger self, proud, unyielding, draped in Confederate gray. The gold trim of his uniform still hung in his wardrobe upstairs, but it hadn't touched his shoulders in months. Dust gathered at the collar. His world was shifting, cracking beneath the weight of questions that once would have gotten a man hanged. The war had taken its toll, not just on the land, but on his soul. He remembered the fire in his men when they first rode out, hoisting flags, boasting of heritage and states' rights. He had believed them then. Believed that honor rested in tradition, and tradition in blood. But that belief had begun to die the moment he saw what those rights truly meant. It started on a routine patrol outside Monroe, a small village barely noted on the map. The troops found a group of escapees, runaways from a plantation up north. A mother, 2 children, and an old man. His lieutenant, a boy too eager for glory, had ordered them beaten for information. They begged. The mother offered her own life if the children were spared. Cyrus gave the order to stop, but too late. The screams stayed with him. After that, he began to see it, how the war wasn't about honor, but power, control. The speeches in Richmond rang hollow. His letters to his wife grew shorter, less boastful. In secret, he began to speak to Northern captives, especially the black soldiers, men who wore Union blue with broken hands and defiant eyes. They didn't beg. They told the truth. The final blow came when he met Elias, once a slave, now a Union scout, captured in a skirmish near Corinth. The man looked him in the eye and said, "You don't scare me, General. I've seen men like you since I was 5. But you look scared." Cyrus had laughed then, hollow and bitter. "And what would make a man like me scared, boy?" Elias leaned in. "Truth. That's what turns men like you inside out." It did. Over the next 2 weeks, Cyrus visited Elias in the makeshift prison barn every night. They spoke in whispers, about freedom, about pain, about the hypocrisy that clothed the Southern cause in silk words while rotting from within. When Elias fell ill and the guards refused him water, Cyrus brought it himself. His men noticed. Whispers spread. Loyalty was a fragile thing, and already the Confederacy was bleeding trust. The decision came one stormy evening. A courier delivered a new order. His battalion was to raise a small border town suspected of hiding traitorous sympathizers, families mostly, and free blacks. It was a cleansing, they said. Strategy. He stood at his desk for a full hour, the rain outside beating like war drums on the roof. He burned the letter. That night he walked to the barn, opened Elias's cage, and handed him a pistol. "Go west," he said. "There's a Union camp near Millfield. I'll make sure you get past the river." Elias stared, confused. "Why?" Cyrus swallowed. "Because I can't unsee it now." The escape was bloodless, but the betrayal was not. By morning, half his officers had fled, others mutinied. He left behind his insignia and rode alone toward Union lines with nothing but his name and a desperate hope they'd listen before they shot. Now, seated in a quiet northern house under the trembling eyes of his old portrait, General Cyrus Whitmore waited for the reckoning. Redemption wasn't given. It had to be earned, and sometimes it came too late, but he would try. The first Union soldier to see him aimed a rifle at his heart. "Don't move, Reb." Cyrus didn't. His arms stayed raised, palms out, coat soaked from the drizzle. He looked nothing like the polished general of old, his beard ragged, boots caked with mud, face drawn from sleepless guilt. Behind him, the woods whispered betrayal with every branch snap. "I'm not here to fight," he said. "Name's Cyrus Whitmore, formerly of the Confederate command." The younger soldier frowned. "Formerly? I've come to talk, that's all." Within hours, he was shackled and blindfolded, marched through a maze of tents and mud to a makeshift Union camp. Men stared. Some cursed, others spit. The smell of smoke and sweat thickened the air. They saw a traitor, either to the north or to the south, depending on how you read the man's face. He was brought before Major Alden, sharp-eyed, black, and colder than iron. He'd fought at Gettysburg and didn't need introductions to know Cyrus's type. "You think we're fools, General?" the major asked. "That you can wander into camp with a guilty conscience and buy salvation with a story?" Cyrus didn't flinch. "I came to offer what I know: deployment orders, weak spots, rail lines. I came because the South lied." Major Alden leaned forward. "They always have. And you just now figured that out?" Silence passed between them like a loaded pistol. Eventually, Alden handed him a blank page. "Write everything, one lie at a time." Cyrus wrote until his hands cramped, detailing troop movements, the use of black prisoners as human shields, secret Confederate supply caches hidden in abandoned churches. When he paused, Alden slid a small photograph across the table. "Elias, he made it," Alden said. "Told us about you, still called you a bastard, but he said you weren't beyond saving." Cyrus looked at the photo, heart cracking. He was right on both counts. In the following weeks, he lived in a tent outside camp, watched, untrusted, but kept alive. Some soldiers came to question him. Others came to threaten. A few, mostly black men, stared at him with unreadable eyes, as if daring him to be worth the risk. Redemption, he realized, didn't look like forgiveness. It looked like labor. So he worked. He helped repair bridges, drove wagons, patched boots, anything the Union needed. But word still spread across the South. A general had defected. One of their own had become a turncoat. The Confederacy didn't forget. Then one night, the retribution came. The first sign was the silence. Cyrus awoke before dawn, sweat beading his forehead despite the chill. Something was off. No morning bugle. No clatter of pans from the mess tent. Just an eerie stillness, like the earth had sucked in its breath. Then came the fire. It started at the perimeter, torches hurled from the tree line, shadows moving like wolves. Confederate raiders, masked and quick, struck the camp in silence. No flags, no mercy. They weren't aiming to defeat, they were aiming to punish. Cyrus barely had time to throw on his boots. Outside, smoke curled into the sky, and men screamed orders and names. He ran toward the makeshift infirmary just as a bullet shattered the lantern near his head. He ducked, rolled, and grabbed a rifle. Old habits died hard. Inside the infirmary, he found 3 wounded men, one of them Elias, now recovered but still limping. Blood trailed from his temple. "They came for you." Elias hissed, dragging himself upright. Cyrus hesitated. "Then I won't let them find me here." Together, they pushed the gurney to block the door, then slipped out the rear canvas flap. Chaos ripped the camp apart. Fires blazed, tents crumbled, men fought blindly in the smoke. Cyrus moved like a man possessed, not for his own survival, but for theirs. He led Elias and 2 others toward the river, where a Union patrol boat was moored for supply runs. Gunshots peppered the ground near them. A voice shouted, "Whitmore! Traitor! You'll die on your knees!" He recognized that voice. Captain Hollis, his former aide, once loyal to Cyrus until the day he defected. Now the man's eyes burned with betrayal. Cyrus didn't fire back. He just grabbed Elias and dove behind a supply crate as a bullet grazed his shoulder. They reached the riverbank breathless. The patrol boat was unmanned, drifting slightly in the current. With no choice, they leapt aboard and cut the line. The boat swayed, but the current was strong enough to pull them out of reach. On the deck, Cyrus collapsed, blood soaking through his shirt. Elias pressed a cloth to the wound and muttered, "You still think this redemption thing's worth it?" Cyrus gave a bitter smile. "If it wasn't, I'd be dead already." By the time dawn broke, the camp lay behind them, smoldering, broken, but not lost. They had survived, but the message was clear. The South would never forgive him, and the North still wasn't sure it should. They reached Millfield by sunset the next day, cold, ragged, and unannounced. Cyrus limped beside Elias down the muddy main road, both of them bruised, silent, and drawing wary stares from every soldier and civilian in sight. Children pointed. Soldiers muttered. One woman spat near Cyrus's feet. Redemption hadn't followed them. It had to be earned all over again. They were escorted to a newly established Union command post in a converted church. Inside, Major Alden stood behind a table strewn with maps, arguing with 2 officers. His face tightened when he saw them. "You're supposed to be dead," he said flatly. Cyrus dropped a bloodied satchel on the table. Inside were notes, sketches, and coordinates. everything he remembered from Confederate planning sessions that hadn't made it onto paper before. "They'll hit Cross Point next," Cyrus said. "That's where the supply train's headed. It's undefended. They'll burn it just to cripple your morale." Alden scanned the papers, then looked up, his expression unreadable. "Why keep helping us after they tried to kill you?" Cyrus looked over at Elias, who nodded faintly. Then he met Alden's gaze. "Because I was one of them," he said. "And I know how far they'll go. I've seen what's left behind when honor's just another excuse for cruelty." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Alden gave a slow nod. "You'll be on the front lines when we stop them. You ready to kill men you once called brothers?" Cyrus didn't blink. "They made that choice when they tried to kill me in my sleep." And so began the march to Cross Point. It rained for 3 days. The road was thick with mud and dread. Soldiers whispered about the rebel general in Union blue. Some respected him. Others prayed he'd die before the next sunrise. Cyrus didn't care. On the final night before they reached Cross Point, he sat alone at the edge of camp, cleaning his rifle by lantern light. Elias approached, tossing him a half-burned cigar. "Hard to believe we're still breathing," Elias said. Cyrus lit the cigar and exhaled slowly. "Some nights I wish we weren't." Elias sat beside him. "You ever think about going back? If you begged, they might let you live." "I'd rather hang than serve them again." Elias nodded. "Then you're one of us now, whether they want you or not." A few yards away, a group of Union soldiers passed by. One muttered, "Traitors sleeping with the enemy." Cyrus didn't react, but Elias stood and glared. "You best watch your mouth," he growled. "That man saved my life twice. He switched sides for truth. What have you done but shoot at smoke?" Silence fell. The soldiers moved on. Cyrus looked up, tired but grateful. The truth was, he didn't know if he belonged anywhere anymore. But tomorrow, they would find out what side of history he'd truly earned. Cross Point came into view just after dawn. Its quiet streets and old rail station nestled between hills thick with mist. It was peaceful, too peaceful. And General Cyrus Whitmore knew too well the kind of silence that comes before blood. He stood beside Major Alden, peering through a spyglass. Smoke curled on the horizon, a sign of Confederate scouts already probing the far end of town. "They'll come through the West Ridge," Cyrus said. "Flat terrain, good for wagons, bad for defense." Alden nodded. "Then we pull their pride out by the roots." The plan was brutal in its elegance. Let the Confederate cavalry reach the depot, trap them with burning roadblocks, then strike from both flanks. Cyrus would lead the forward unit, out front, exposed. A public redemption, or a public death. As the sun climbed, the first shots rang out. Confederate gray spilled into Cross Point like a storm. Horses screamed, rifles cracked. The depot shook as musket balls ripped through its walls. Union soldiers, waiting behind collapsed wagons and crates, surged forward. Cyrus led the charge, his coat soaked in mud, voice cutting through the chaos. "Hold the line! Cut them off at the tracks!" A Confederate lieutenant, barely more than a boy, ran at him with a saber. Cyrus parried, twisting the blade from his hand, then knocked him unconscious with the butt of his rifle. No killing unless he had to. Not today. The battle twisted into close quarters. Screams echoed between buildings. Elias fought nearby, gashing his shoulder on a stray bayonet, but pressing on. Then came Captain Hollis, the man who had once served Cyrus and now burned with vengeance. He spotted Cyrus across the depot platform, drew his pistol, and fired. The shot tore through Cyrus's side. He collapsed behind a crate, bleeding and gasping, but still gripping his rifle. Hollis advanced. "You don't get to die a hero, you southern bastard." "I never wanted to be a hero," Cyrus wheezed. "Just not a coward anymore." Hollis raised his pistol again, but Elias tackled him from the side, both men crashing into the mud. A Union soldier rushed in and ended it. Hollis's body twitched once. Then nothing. By the time Union reinforcements arrived from the rear ridge, the Confederate line broke. The South's raid failed, routed by their own former general. Cross Point stood. Cyrus awoke 2 days later in the town infirmary, the smell of bandages and smoke thick in the air. Alden stood at his bedside. "You saved that town," Alden said, "and a lot of lives." "I also led men who once burned them," Cyrus whispered, ashamed. Alden placed a folded Union flag on the table. "And now you're the reason they're rebuilding." Outside, people gathered. Clara, the young black girl who once served tea in a Confederate mansion, now helped organize food for the wounded. Elias sat on a bench, arm bandaged, telling stories to a group of boys who stared at him with wonder. Cyrus leaned back, eyes closing slowly. He would never be a saint. He would never escape the shadow of what he once represented. But he had crossed the line, walked away from power, privilege, and pride, and chosen to bear the weight of truth. That would have to be enough. And maybe, just maybe, it was. If you believe in stories that challenge power, expose lies, and honor redemption, don't just watch, remember. Subscribe now. Like, share, and stand for truth. Because some battles are worth switching sides for.